Serious, when was the first time you had experienced racism? I mean, elementary school? Other kids making fun of my middle name, which is Chinese, or doing that thing where they pull their eyes to be narrower and then speaking in broken English. IDK, kids are dumb. Where does it go from cultural insensitivity to racism? Not a clue, but did it make me feel like an outsider? Yup. I was walking and holding hands with a girl after a date. She was colored, which is a different thing than black, in South Africa. Near the train station in Cape Town, a large group of black men objected threateningly to my stupidity in thinking that just because Mandela got elected I get to walk around holding hands with a colored girl. Things moved towards violence, and another group of men, colored men, arrived and stepped in on that point, taking my side, I think, just to motivate conflict with the other group. My date and I just ran. I'm a white-black mix, but my skin is pretty fair, so I don't experience much of the racism against black people. When I was in 7th grade though, I went to a mostly white school, and I was the only kid of color in my math class, and the only mixed kid in my grade I think. I was decent at math before I had this teacher, but I started doing horribly in her class as she would take off crazy amounts of points for little mistakes. I had to start going a mathematics learning center just to keep from failing the class. At first I just thought she didn't like me as a person until I moved on to 8th grade. I knew 2 sisters who were also mixed in the grade below who were now in her math class, and they experienced the same problems with her. We found out that no one else had a problem with this teacher being crazy harsh, only us mixed kids. It was pretty indirect, but it raised some flags. When I was a little kid my mom was accused of stealing me. I'm Asian and she's white, I'm adopted. My dad, also white, feels uncomfortable in public with me because people think I'm a mail-order bride. 1985, small town in the north. A Hmong man kidnapped a 7-year-old girl and raped her, claiming she was now his bride. When he was caught, his lawyer tried claiming it was because he didn't understand our laws. So the judge responded, "So this is okay in Laos?" Guy never made it to prison after that. My grandpa said the town changed after that. Everyone was really suspicious of Hmong men at that point. Local shops wouldn't serve them. There was a campaign to demand they get removed. It was a weird time for a 5-year-old who had a few Hmong friends. I was 8 years old. I was at school in London and some of the cool kids came up to me and started saying that I was a terrorist. I didn't know what that meant and I doubt they did either. I still remember the look on my mom's face when I went home and asked her. She just looked so sad. Once she'd explained to me what terrorism was and why the kids were saying it, I started noticing it everywhere. Ignorance is bliss. Was 8. Was playing on some monkey bars in a neighbor's backyard with their daughter. I'm Asian, she's white. My twin sister was also with us. We were having the time of our lives. My sis and I had been coming over for weeks after school, no permission needed. Her mom came home early. She came to the backyard and started yelling. Grabbed her crying daughter, yelling she can't play with us anymore because she's already got so many nice white friends. She brought her daughter inside, and came out again to yell at us to go home, that she never wants to see us on her property anymore and her daughter can't be friends with us, ever. So we left, crying all the way home. Our mom was there and she asked what's wrong, did we fall off the monkey bars? We said no, told her the story. She hugged us and told us what racism is. I'll never forget. Biracial person here, white and black. I got followed in a store when I was a teenager. I had been called a list of racial slurs before then, but being followed stands out the most. In high school one of my friends said to me, "You know, if you were a little bit fairer you'd have a chance with her." I still am not comfortable with my skin color. The first I can remember was about age 5 to 6. We spent more time at that age with family and close friends, so I first learned I was an outsider by other Asians. They spoke the language, I didn't, and my mom was white, so the other kids, cousins, made sure to distinguish I wasn't really one of them. Around the same age I learned at school that I'd be the token Asian friend. The most common phrase kids and now adult professionals use is, "What are you?" Well, I'm some kind of Asian halvesy who looks Hispanic. People suck. At my grandmother's house in the 1960s. I was old enough to understand some of the nuances of speech. My mother and grandmother were discussing my black, curly hair, and in a sarcastic manner, my grandmother said, "Perhaps he's got a touch of the tar brush." It was part of an ongoing love-hate relationship between my mother and grandmother, and although I knew the comment to be meant as an insult, it was a while before I knew my grandmother meant father unknown, and likely to be a black man. This tarbrush term was still common parlance in that part of the world when I left the area in the 1980s. Thank you for the interesting question. I am white British. But I was with my black Portuguese friends in a pub bathroom. I was having a wee and they were by the sinks talking in their language. Another white British woman came out of a cubicle and started to tell them to speak English and fuck off back to their own country. When I came out of my cubicle, she rounded on me and told me to fuck off to my own country too. As soon as I spoke in my very obvious British accent and informed her I was already in my own county, she apologized and said her beef was with the black girls, not me. I told her I didn't give a fuck. I now have a problem with her. Called her a racist and said she was an embarrassment to white people and made her apologize to my friends or I'll get her kicked out. One of my friends was crying in the toilet by this point and the other told me once the white lady left that this happened all the time. Why people feel the need to bully based on skin or language is beyond me. My mom still talks about this one. It was when I was 4, my little brother was 2, my older brother was 5.5, and my sister was 7. My mom would walk us to a church program when we were young. We weren't Christian, we're Muslim, and on our way there some men in a truck yelled at my mom saying, "Go back to your country, ya dirty immigrant." Apparently I yelled back, "Hey, that's not very nice, have a good day, mister," because my mom always taught us to be kind even if someone is mean. My mom still brings it up asking me why I'm not that nice anymore. Now I just gotta say, Mom, I'm not as optimistic as I used to be. First time I realized something that is similar to racism but just as bad was when I was young and a relative made offensive joke about Muslims and pork. I thought it was funny, I didn't understand it on a bigoted level. I told my Muslim friend it cause ya know it's a joke about Muslims and he's a Muslim. In my young mind it made sense. Well, after his parents called in the school to complain, after my friend told them about it, I had to write an apology letter, and after it was explained to me what bigotry but definitely not racism was, I was more than happy to apologize profusely. Another example that kids aren't bigoted but are taught that way. Well, I've experienced instances of subtle racism before, but I would say that I experienced outright racism only really when I moved. When I got my first job here, customer service, some typical old man, probably from the colonial era, refused my service and loudly talked to my coworker about certain nationalities and their thieving nature. Then at my second job in a nightclub, which I still work at actually, I get occasional comments like my skin being the color of shit from drunk, aggressive people. I hate it so much. I go through more subtle types of racism too, mostly in which people assume negative things about me based on my nationality, and I would say it bothers me more than the above. I come from a country which isn't really well liked and kind of misrepresented, on Reddit and by Western countries in general. It's given me a bit of a complex where I'm conscious to shed the stereotypes people tend to assume about me. I can't really explain it better than that. Growing up, my parents were civil rights testers, people hired, volunteer to investigate specific claims of racial discrimination in businesses. I remember being with my mom at a restaurant and being made to wait for a table or being denied service, while my dad, the white man for the test, would be seated immediately. I was called the N-word in the 3rd grade. I remember in primary school, a 6-year OLF telling someone of the same age, of African descent, "You can't play with us because you're black." Couple of years later, the kid drowned in a canal. My family and I lived in Saudi Arabia for 16 years. When I was 4, a bunch of Arab women pulled me and my sisters, she was 7 at that time, hair and laughed about it. Being an innocent preschooler at that time, I was physically hurt but didn't understand why they did that to me and my sister. My mom just told us they fancied our hair. So I just teared up a little from the pain and moved on. Fast forward to when I was around 9, 10 years old. The same shit happened to me while I was shopping for school supplies at a store near my school. That time, I was pretty sure it wasn't because they liked my curly hair. I saw a condescending smirk as I looked at the grown-ass woman who pulled my hair. We barely go back home, so I've always thought that KSA was my home. I realized that it really wasn't and will never be completely accepted the way Asians are in other parts of the world. I'm Muslim, and in middle school there were these group of kids who were complete jerks to me. For an entire year, they'd say I was ISIS, I was hiding a bomb in my book bag, or I was gonna blow up the school. I just went along with it and played it off as a joke. I didn't wanna seem as a crybaby or anything. After that year, it stopped, but I still experience racism like that to his day, and the best thing I can do is play it off as a joke and not care, because it's just a stereotype. Can't let this stuff get to me. In first grade, we were doing a 12 Dancing Princesses skit and the seniors, middle schoolers, everyone fair ended up getting selected, and me the darkest wasn't. These have been so impactful on me that even today, I try to just rub off all the melanin off my skin. No matter how hard I try, this world has convinced me that dark is ugly. School, high school, etc. There was always a derogatory term for a dark-skinned person. At some point was called Apu. God, I hated that character because of this. I've experienced racism even amongst my own race. I'm a darker-skinned Malay. Lighter-skinned Malays are always acting all superior and shit because of it. Sheesh. When my mother ripped my hand out of the hand of the black boy I was playing with after school. You were the best at pretending to be Sonic, Thomas. Some asshole store owner from Hong Kong told us to leave saying, no Filipino. No Filipino. No money.